Hello everyone, I am Vibha Chauhan and welcome to Jai Hind Classes Funda Clear. So today I will explain class 8 history chapter 8. Chapter is Women, Caste and Reform. So if I say that what happens to children, what are the lives of children in present day, so you say that they go to schools, they go to universities, they can marry whom they want. So but the situation was different 200 years ago. Women's life was miserable. How was it? Girls were not allowed to go to school for education, and there was a practice of child marriage. They were married at a very low age, at the age of 8-9. So, and after the marriage there was a practice of polygamy. That means their husbands were allowed to marry more than one wife in both religions, Hindu and Muslim. And there was also another practice, which was practice of sati, and in this women were burned when their husbands died. They were burned in the funeral praise of their husbands. And if they want, then they had to, and if they didn't want, then they had to. People were forcing them and they had to burn themselves, and they were called as sati. So this was the situation of 200 years ago of women. There were discrimination and caste. There were also discrimination in the basis of caste. You know, there were 4 castes, which were Shaman, Kshatriya, Vaishyas and Shudras. Shudras were the lowest and they were considered as untouchables. They were discriminated. They were not allowed to enter temples. They were not allowed to drink water from those. The higher people were drinking, higher people were taking water. And Kshatriya and Brahman, you know that they were the upper caste. They were considered as upper caste, and Vaishyas were those traders, money lenders. They were in the middle, but at the lower, Shudras were very discriminated. So in this chapter we will study about the reforms on the basis of women discrimination, on the basis of caste discrimination, and what were those reforms, about reform organizations, Indian reformers and their thoughts. So all this we will study in this chapter. So what are the topics of this chapter? The topics of this chapter are working towards change, and in this we will study changing the lives of widows, girls begin going to school, women write about women, caste and social reform, demands for equality and justice, Ghulam Giri, who could enter temples, the non-Brahmin movement, organizing for reform. So our first topic is working towards change. So by the 19th century we can see there were lots of change, there were lots of reforms in the lives, in the discrimination, in the basis of women, in the basis of caste system. So what were those reforms? We'll discuss in this chapter. So by the 19th century people were working towards change, because by the 19th century new modes of communication were introduced, new modes of communication were being invented, like you see books, magazines or newspapers, printing press was being invented. They were coming up in the people, and even the lower people can buy them and can read them, because they were cheaper than the manuscripts which you have read in previous classes. So these were very cheaper for them, and they could read them, and also they could write them and can spread their thoughts and can spread what the situation was in the country. So by the printing press, by the printing technology, they were working towards change. And another factor, another method of working towards change was reforms. Many of Indian reformers or in reforms, they organized reform organizations, were working towards change. One of such example is Raja Ram Mohan Roy. He was an Indian reformer who worked towards the situation of women, situation of caste, and he also founded the Brahmo Samaj, which later came to be known as Brahmo Samaj, and which was working towards change. So they were working towards change. What were those changes? We will discuss further. We will discuss later in this chapter. So our first subtopic is changing the lives of widows. So Raja Ram Mohan Rai, as I have said, he was the Indian reformer. So he was very affected. He was particularly moved by the practice of sati, by the situation of women, by the situation of widows, and he didn't like the practice of sati, and he was well versed in the languages, in Sanskrit, Persian, and in many other Indian languages, many European languages. So he used this talent in the ban of practice of sati. While he was learned in Sanskrit, he was learned in many languages, so he used to read ancient texts, and in this he showed the people that there was no any section of sati burning, of widow burning in ancient texts, and he showed all them too. And after that, British government was also seeing that, was also affected by that. And you have already studied that Britishers were criticizing the traditional customs, traditional Indian methods, so they banned the practice of sati in 1829. And the same way of strategy that Raja Ram Mohan Roy used, that he had to study ancient texts because he was learned in many languages, so he used to read ancient texts. So the same strategy of learning, of reading the ancient text was used by other reformers as well, because if they wanted that it was wrong, so they used to read the ancient texts and to show the people, because people believed in the ancient texts, so they used to read the ancient text, and by showing the people, they banned the wrong practices, wrong ideas from the people's mind. And for instance, we can take example of Ishwar Chand Vidyasagar. He also studied ancient text, and he said that it was right of widow remarriage, because before it was not there that widow could be widow can remarriage, because they were burnt as sati. But after that, Ishwar Chand Vidyasagar said that it was right of widow remarriage, and in 1856 a law was passed by the government, by the British government, and in this it was right for widows to remarry. It was a law of widow remarriage. So many people were opposed to this, were opposing Ishwar Chand Vidyasagar, and they even boycotted him. They used to boycott Ishwar Chand Vidyasagar, and spreading of the widow remarriage was spread throughout the country, in the many parts of country. For example, in the Madras, in the southern part, Veer Salingam Pontulu made a organization of widow remarriage, in which this was allowed of widow remarriage. He founded an organization, and in the north part, intellectuals also used to do. For example, Swami Dayanand Saraswati, who founded Arya Samaj, and in this he supported widow remarriage. So you can see that the lives of widows was changed by the efforts which were made by Indian reformers. And in 1829 sati was banned, and 1856 widow remarriage was allowed. So this was all about this subtopic. So our next subtopic is girls begin going to school. So many reformers were thinking about the education of girls. They wanted to empower girls, because if a girl was educated, then her condition was also improved, because she was empowered. She was kind of confidence will wake up in her. So they wanted to education for girls, and many reformers like Vidyasagar set up schools for girls in Calcutta, and other reformers also set up a school for girls in Bombay. So these were the first schools that were set for girls by reformers, by Indian reformers. But people were not allowing girls to go to school. They were fear of, because they thought that if a girl was going to school, then she would taken away from the home, she would prevent from the domestic duties, because during that time people's thought were that the women had to do the only domestic duties, domestic work, that were household chores. So they were fear if they went to schools, if they go to school, then they would have taken away from the home, from their home. And they were also feared of them, because if a girl was going to school, then she had to go from the public places. So people thought if a girl was going from public public places, then she would have a bad influence on her, then her behavior would be wrong, then a bad influence will be on her. So that were wrong mistakes, wrong misbeliefs of people. These were the misbeliefs of people, and they were not allowing girls to go to school. And some people were trying to educate girls by their liberal fathers, by their liberal husbands. That means girls were being taught at home by their liberal fathers and liberal husbands, and many of the women were trying to educate by themselves. They were educating themselves by their own. As you have already read in class 7th about Rashundra Devi, she was a woman who used to study by her own, by taking the pages of his child, and she would learn, and she learned how to study. So there were many different problems in the education for girls, but later many more schools were set up. For example, Arya Samaj had set up schools for girls, and the Jyoti Rai Phule also set up schools for girls in Maharashtra, and Arya Samaj in Punjab. So these were the schools set up, and these were for the Hindus. And what about the Muslims? And Muslims, girls were also being taught at home. They were learning Quran in Arabic, and after that they learned how to write Quran, and the first copies of Quran were being written. And one of the most big reformer of girls' education in Quran in Arabic was Mumtaz Ali, who interpreted the verses of Quran and used to taught girls. So they were in the North Etruscan Muslims family. Girls were being taught at home by the teacher which were hired up. So this was the situation of education of the girls. What were the reforms for education for girls? So next subtopic is women right about women. So by the early 20th centuries, the Begums of Bengal were trying to educate girls, were trying to improve the situation of education of girls. They were working in the field of education for girls, and they had set primary schools for girls. And Begum Ruqayya Shakawat Hussain also set up schools in Calcutta and Patna. She set up, and she was a fearless woman who argued for the education of girls. She was Begum, and she tried so much for education for girls. And by the 1880s, women began to go to universities to be doctor. They were studying to become a doctor, to become teacher. They were being taught for anything they wanted to. So by 1880s, girls began going to universities like boys used to do. So by the 1880s, there were changes in the field of education of girls, and many women write about other women. Write. How did they write? Like for example, Tarabai Shinde, who wrote a book which was named Stri Purush Tulna. Stri means women, Purush means man, and Tulna means comparison. So this book was a comparison of male and female, was comparison of men and women. In this book, she showed how lives of women was miserable, how the situation of the women, how the discrimination were, differences were there. And another, you can say another example is also there, which is the great Sanskrit scholar Pandita Ramabai, who also wrote a book about the miserable lives of upper caste women. Miserable lives of upper caste women, because the lower caste, which were very lower, men and women, there were no much discrimination among them, because if they were very poor and they both used to do work. Women also used to work because they were very poor, so they had to do something for their economy, for their financial status. So women also do work equal to men, equal to husband, equal to, as any work she used to do, it was rather than domestic work or any work, but she was a little bit equal to, so there were many less discrimination. But for the upper castes, for women, they were depended on the economy, for financial status on men, whether it was directly or indirectly, but they had to be depended. So Pandita Ramabai, who was a great scholar of Sanskrit, wrote a book about the miserable lives of upper caste women, how they were dependent and how their lives were. And by the 20th century, by the late 20th century, many women started to write books, edited magazines, and they were spreading their thoughts. They were using new modes of communication. They were writing about other women, and they got support from the Jawaharlal Nehru and Subhash Chandra Bose, as they were participating in the national movements of 1920s. So they got support of Jawaharlal Nehru and Subhash Chandra Bose. They lent their support to them for the arguments, for the demands of the women, and the nationalists who were doing movements, like politicians like Jawaharlal Nehru, like Subhash Chandra Bose, promised women who were against the discrimination, were promised that there would be suffrage of men and women after the independence, as before they were doing, they didn't have any suffrage, as they didn't have any right to vote. But after women asked for the right to vote, and after the nationalist movements, they got support of Subhash Chandra Bose and Jawaharlal Nehru, and they promised them that there would be suffrage for men and women after independence. And they asked them, Jawaharlal Nehru nationalists asked the women to participate in anti-British struggles. They had to. So this was all about the women How did they write? What were their thoughts? They were writing about other women, about their situations. So next topic is caste and social reform. So as I have discussed about the women reforms, what were the reforms in women's lives, what were the reforms in their lives, now we will discuss about the lives, about the reform in the life of caste systems. On the basis of caste system, what were the lives of lower caste people, how was the reforms for them. So social and caste and social reform. The reforms in social and caste we will study, as many reformers were thinking about the reforms in caste system also, because there were caste discrimination, so much caste discrimination between the lower caste people and upper caste people. So people were asking for equality for all those people, because they were all people, so they were asking for equality. Reformers were asking for equality, and they were working. For example, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, who had founded Brahmo Samaj in Calcutta, was working towards the change in the life of lower caste people on the basis of caste system. He was against the beliefs of Brahmins, who used to do this discrimination between the lower caste people and the upper caste people. So he was working towards the change, and in 1840 Brahmara Mandali was founded to work towards the discrimination of lower caste people. What were the discrimination? To work on the lower caste people, to work on the discrimination differences in the caste system. So it was founded in 1840 for the work, and the situation also changed by these reforms also, as well as their situation changed by another factor also, because after some time, after some years, after 20th century, during 20th century, the lower caste people went into cities for work because they were oppressive of the discrimination. So they went into cities, and there they got works as laborers, as constructors, and there they had no inequality because they all were treated equally. If the upper caste person was also working there, and he was also, the lower caste person was also working there, so there were no inequality, there were no discrimination. So the situation changed by the reforms also, as well as they went into cities. So how was the situation changed? How were the reforms? What were the reforms? And there was also another factor for the changes in the caste system, that was the army. The army was also providing, because the lower caste people like the Mahar people were considered as untouchables. They were thought that they were untouchables. They were considered, if they had touched something, then they had, the upper caste people were not touching that. So Mahar, in which the B.R. Ambedkar was born, in this family, in a Mahar family, B.R. Ambedkar was born, and his father used to taught in the army, in the distinction of army. So you can see that there were reforms, they were providing, they were discrimination, but the situation changed. How it changed? So the subtopic is demands for equality and justice. So gradually and slowly, by the 19th century, by the mid 19th century, people were working for the discrimination of the caste system, on the basis of caste system. The people who were being treated unequally because of the upper caste people or anything else, they were trying to do something. And one of those movements, they were doing movements, they were doing many things. So one of those movements was Satnami movement in central India, which was led by Ghasidas, who was the lower caste, you can say. So this movement was led by Ghasidas, and it was in central India, and it was named as Satnami movement. And he did this movement, Ghasidas did this movement. They were ladder workers, so they did this movement for their financial status, to improve their status, because ladder workers' status was very harsh, you can say, because they had to make shoe, and they were treated very unequally. So they led movement, Satnami movement, in the central India for their financial status. And movement was also for the equality for the Chandala cultivators. Chandala cultivators who used to work in funneral. You see that after funneral, they used to collect funneral things. That means they used to do work in funnerals. They used to burn crops. So Chandala cultivators also led movement against their status, because they were being treated unequally. So they also led movement. And it was not that all people were from the lower caste. Some upper caste peoples were also there who used to do something for those lower caste people, for the discrimination of caste system. And one of those was Sri Narayan Guru, who was from Kerala, and he was a great guru, and he was from Izava caste. So he also urged power, he also urged power against the discrimination to to vanish this discrimination between the castes, and he also urged power, also did work on these things. And one of his famous statements was Oru Jati, Oru Matam, Oru Dayam Manushyani. That means one caste, one religion, one God for humankind. So this was his influential statement. That was not a movement, that was a statement, and it influenced many people. So this was his one of the main statements, you can say. And there were many other movements which were led by other people, which were led by other reformers, Indian reformers. All sects were done against. There were many non-Brahmin movements, and the non-Brahmin people urged power against, because if a person is trying, that they would not be anything but a group. Unity is power, you can say. If they were not allowed to do something, then one person went, then they would beat him, the lower caste people. But if thousands of people were going, then they could not do anything, the upper caste people. So all non-Brahmin people urged against Brahmin people, urged against upper caste, urged against the discrimination. They were treated unequally. So this was all about the demands for equality and justice. They were demanding for equality. They were demanding for justice, because they were injustice for them. If they were treated discrimination, they were treated unequally, then how could it be justice? So this was all about the subtopic. So the next subtopic is Ghulamgiri. So as I said that there were many reformer leaders, because the movement which was led, the work which was done was under a leader. So as I said that there were many leaders, there were many Dalit leaders, there were many lower caste leaders who urged against the discrimination, against the injustice, and one of them influential was Jyoti Rai Phule, who was born in 1827, and he had studied in school which was set by Christian missionaries, because Christian missionaries was also setting schools for lower caste people, for the tribal communities, because they were against the discrimination, against the injustice, against the differences on the basis of castes. So he had studied in this school which was set up by Christian missionaries, and after studying, when he grown, he came up to the idea that the injustice was wrong, that the discrimination between castes were wrong. He attacked directly to the argument, to the statement which was said by Brahmins, that they were superior to all people, they were Aryans. He directly attacked to the statement. He thought that they were not superior, and he argued, Jyoti Rai Phule argued that the Aryans were foreigners to India, foreigners for India, and they had come from any other subcontinents, and Aryans were not the literally people of India, and who were the lower caste people who were subjugated by Aryans came to be low caste people, because before they were the people of India, and when the Aryans came to India, invaded India, they subjugated the people of India, and thus they came to be known as low caste people, and the Aryans called themselves as upper caste people. And this statement was by Jyoti Rai Phule, and according to him, it was that the Aryans had no right on the lands of India. They had nothing to do in India. According to him, they were foreigners. The Brahmins were foreigners. The Kshatriyas were foreigners. All upper caste people were foreigners. According to him, the main authority, the main ruler of India should be a low caste person, because he was the native of India. And according to him, he also said that before the Aryans invaded India, there was a golden age where people were healthy, people were happy because of their ruler. They were happy with their ruler, and the life was very comfortable. So this was the statement, these were the statement which was led by Jyoti Rai Phule. And in 1873 he wrote a book, Ghulamgiri, which means slavery. He wrote book because he wanted something it was not that he wrote book because he didn't want something. So what did he meant by the book, the Gulamgiri? According to him, because around 10 years ago he wrote the book around 1863, the American Civil War had just ended, and you know that in that war it was between slaves, it was for the slaves. So in this book he intermediated, he connected a link. He said that the lives of Indian low caste people was similar to the slaves of America. He wrote the book Gulamgiri to mean this. Gulamgiri means slavery. So he meant that the lives of low caste people were the low caste people, Shudras, Ati Shudras. Ati Shudra means who were untouchables. Shudras means who were laborers, were just similar to the slaves of America. So he meant that, and he was against the discrimination. He was against the beliefs, misbeliefs of caste system, and for this he worked so much. And it is not that he only worked in the basis of caste. He worked on the fields of injustice. Where there were injustice, he worked in all the fields, and slowly and gradually he worked so much, and he success also, and he did many things. He set up schools, he did many things, and these movements were led by other Dalit leaders such as Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and E.V. Ramaswamy Naikar from south, and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was from western part of India. So these were the ideas of Jyotirao Phule, who had worked so much for the injustice in the field of injustice. So our next subtopic is who could enter temples. So as I said that the movements, that the work was led by other Dalit leaders also, such as Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, such as E.V. Ramaswamy Naikar. So Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, he was born in a Mahar family which was low caste, and he was called as a Dalit. Dalit means who was from very low caste, who were considered as untouchables. So when he was a kid, he used to go to schools, and there he used to face a discrimination between him and other students who were from different castes. So he faced so much discrimination in his school's life that he used to sit in the corner, he used to sit outside from the class, and he was not allowed to drink from the water from school, from the taps which the other students, which the upper caste students used to do. So he faced so much problem in his school life, and after some years when he grown up, he got a fellowship and went in US for higher studies. And when he returned back to India in 1999, he used to write extensively about the upper caste people in the contemporary society. He used to write about the discrimination, what he faced, and what were the other people's facing. So he used to write very extensively because there was so much discrimination, as you can see. And in 1927, he led a movement. He started a movement which was Temple Entry Movement. Temple Entry Movement, according to this, he allowed the lower caste people, Dalits, untouchables, or Shudras, Ati Shudras, all lower caste people who were being treated unequally, he allowed them to enter temples. He allowed them to drink water from the temple tap tank, you can say, because before they were not allowed, they were being treated unequally, so they were not allowed to enter temples, and they were even not allowed to drink water from those taps. And after the movement, the priests who were from upper caste, the Brahmins, the priests of temples, were very outraged. But B.R. Ambedkar didn't stop, and he led three movements between 1927 and 1935, which was known as Temple Entry Movement. So you can say who could enter temples. The topic is saying that who were not entering the temple, but after that they were sufficient, they were allowed to enter temple, because before they were not allowed to enter temple, and even a one could go, even a one went by mistake, or he had to do something in the temple, and the lower caste people, even if one person went into the temple, then the upper caste people would beat them. They used to beat them, but if there were numerous people, then how could they stop it? So B.R. Ambedkar led such movements, 3 movements between 1927 and 1935. So our next subtopic is the non-Brahmin movement. So non-Brahmin movement, which were led by non-Brahmins, which were not from the upper caste or from the Brahmin castes. So in the early 20th century, these movements, these non-Brahmin movements were started by non-Brahmins, as it is named as non-Brahmin movement because it was led by non-Brahmins. You can understand it. So the movements, the nationalists who were doing movement, the non-Brahmin movements, argued that the Brahmins were the invaders, were the highest of Aryans who had come from other subcontinents, and the Dravidian races of India, the peoples, the southern people of India who were from the south, so they were called as Dravidian. So these people considered Dravidian as the heirs of the India. They considered them as the people of India. So we will study about E.V. Ramaswamy Naicker, who was from south, and he was from a middle class family. He was not that poor or was not that rich. So he was from a middle class family, and he had studied, and initially he was interested in Sanskrit. He was very concerned, very interested in Sanskrit, and later on, after some years, he joined the Indian National Congress, which was in power during that time. So he joined Indian National Congress, but he left after some time. Why did he leave? Because a feast was organized by the nationalists, and in that feast he saw discrimination, because the seats arrangements were according to the caste systems, were following caste systems. Seat arrangements were different for different caste systems. So he left the Indian National Congress and led movements, and he was also called as Periyar. In South, he was also called as Periyar, but his real name was E.V. Ramaswamy Naicker. So he led many movements against the caste system, against the beliefs of caste system, against the discrimination, against the injustice, and he was totally disbelief of the Hindu scriptures, because he thought the scriptures like the Bhagavad Gita, Ramayana, and the Mind of Manu, these were the scriptures which had dominated power of Brahmins in India and domination of men over women. So he thought that these scriptures were the main reason for the power of Brahmins in India. So he was in disbelief with these scriptures, and he had led many movements against the power, against the caste systems, and he wanted to make a new kind of age. He wanted to make a new life for lower caste people who were being treated unequally. So there were many debates over there, and it was not that he didn't get unchallenged, because every movement was challenged, because during that time Hindu Orthodox, who were in misbelief of ancient text, were against E.V. Ramaswamy Naicker, as they were also against the women reforms, Hindu Orthodox, Muslim Orthodox, because they were in the thoughts of ancient texts. So, and in the opposition of the E.V. Ramaswamy Naicker, what they did, they made sabhas like Sanatan Dharma Sabhas and the Dharma Mahamandalis they made, and associations were also made by them. So these were the opposition of Hindu Orthodox against the even Samirakkar, his work, because they were in misbeliefs of ancient texts, and you can still see that there are many differences, there are some differences, and there are still debates on this topic. So the next and last subtopic of this chapter is organizing for reforms. So we have studied all the chapter about the reforms on the basis of discrimination, on the basis of caste system, on the basis of women's discrimination. So there were many things which were organizing for reforms. There were many organizations, there were many Samaj Sabhas, you can say, which were doing things for reforms. What were those? Like the Brahmo Samaj, it was later called as Brahmo Samaj, but first it was called as Brahmo Sabha, and the Veda Samaj, and the Young Bengal movement, which was led by Desrosiers. He was an Anglo-Indian and his full name was Henry Louis Vivian Desrosiers, and he was a teacher in a Hindu college in Bengal, and he was also thinking of reforming, and he made an impact on his children, on his students, which he used to taught in school, in college. So he urged power between those among those students, and those students urged against the discrimination, and they led movement which was called as Young Bengal movement. Young Bengal movement, it is known because it was led by young persons, young students, and Desrosiers, who had only the life of 20 or to 22 years, but he had done a big thing in this a short lifespan time. And other reforms were also there, like the Veda Samaj, which was inspired by Brahmo Samaj, and it also believed in one God, and it also was working on reforms for women education, for many things, for reform in caste society. So it also was reforming, and the reforms were all in the parts of India. This was not that only in central India or only north part of India. It was all in India. Like in Punjab, it was Sikh movement, and by the Muslims they were the Aligarh movement, which was led by Syed Ahmad Khan, and it was a movement for modernizing the India, for Western things, to modernize India. And one of the most organizing for reforms were the Ramakrishna Mission, which was led by Swami Vivekananda. Ramakrishna Paramhans, the Ramakrishna Mission was named after him, and he was the guru, or you can say teacher, of Swami Vivekananda. And Swami Vivekananda believed in his teacher, and his teacher believed in peace for salvation. For the salvation he believed, and the work of this mission was for the peace salvation. And Swami Vivekananda also done things for the reforms, and when he went to Chicago, his speech made an influence in people, and after that he made an impact, many effects on people. So these were the reform organizations which were organizing for reforms. So this was all about this subtopic, and our chapter is completed. I have discussed all topics and subtopics, and in next video I will discuss next chapter. So thank you very much.